What's up, everybody? Boy Big Brando here, and today I want to talk about comparing yourself to other brands. Now, this is going to be another My Mistake video in that series. This is something that I fell into when I first started out, and it was very hard for me to get out of. When I say comparing yourself to other brands, what I'm talking about is being heavily influenced in what you do and pretty much trying to do a carbon copy of what other brands are doing. There's a lot of brands out there that fall victim to this, and I see it all the time when people are hitting me up on Instagram. I'm looking at their stuff and I could see where the influence comes from. It's very, very easy to fall into this and feel like you're creating something on your own and you feel like you're just following the trend. But at the same time, there's a very, very thin line of following the trend and actually just being a Xerox copy of the brand that you look up to. Now, this is back in 98, 99. There was a brand called Iceberg that was out. They used a lot of cartoon characters in their clothing. That's what they were known for, and that's what was very popular. I would compare that to what Supreme is till this day. Supreme now is very popular, expensive for a lot of young kids, but it's something that they're really into and everybody wants at least one piece. That's what Iceberg used to be back in, I would say, like 98 or so. So around that time, I was creating my own t-shirts. I was getting them screen printed. I was kind of doing my own screen printing from home, single color stuff. And like I said, I was just working out of the garage. I was in school at the time. There was the kids that were, I guess you could say, trendsetters within the school that were wearing Iceberg, and they had all the cool shit. And then they had the kids that were wearing other shit like off brands that had cartoon characters on it. It was a really weird time. So imagine people walking around in full denim outfit, denim jacket, denim pants, with having like a fucking cartoon character popping out of the pocket right here, or the back had a big ass cartoon character. And when I say cartoon character, I'm talking about like Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny and fucking shit like that. Iceberg was doing it, but they were doing it right. So every kid wanted Iceberg. Not every kid could afford it. A lot of kids didn't even know where to get the shit from, but it was very popular back then. I noticed the popularity in that. I didn't understand the name brand had a lot to do with it, I guess you could say, outside of just having cartoon characters on your clothing. So what I was doing was I was creating my own cartoon characters and putting them on my t-shirts and wondering why they weren't selling. So this is where things got really fucked up for me. Was I was buying a ton of blank t-shirts. I was just pressing my own characters. One, I was creating really cool ass characters and I was pressing them on the shirts, but I couldn't figure out why people weren't buying them. I was thinking maybe I'm not using a licensed character like Bugs Bunny or Speedy Gonzales or whoever it was, because I was using my own cartoon characters that I was creating. But I did notice that a lot of people were wearing like the bootleg Iceberg shit. I forgot the name brand of it, but you could buy it at a swap meet, and it had like a dog or like a cat or a rabbit or whatever it was. Not name brand character, it just had a character and people were wearing it. So I was like, fuck, maybe just cartoon characters in general are popular right now, so let me start doing this. I fucked up. I went heavy. I bought a ton of blank t-shirts. I pressed all these characters on and I was wearing them around school. People were looking and people were asking like, oh, did you create that? I'm like, yeah. It was kind of cool, but it really wasn't. I wasn't selling none. Nobody was buying none. I couldn't even get people to wear it. And I was like, fuck, what the hell is going on? Everybody's wearing these cartoon characters on their clothes. There's people hand painting Mickey Mouse onto their shit. People are, you know, going to that person saying, hey, paint, you know, this character, paint a Tasmanian devil on my shit for me, blah, blah, blah. They're painting them on their Timberlands. They're doing all this shit, customizing Air Force Ones to pretty much match these hand painted shirts. And I could not understand why people weren't into what I was creating. A lot of it had to do was me trying to be a copycat. I seen the influence, I seen the popularity, and I jumped on the train. But when I jumped on the train, I didn't understand that people were into Iceberg for the name Iceberg. They were into these cartoon characters because they couldn't afford Iceberg, so they were painting their own shit on their clothes to mimic Iceberg. You know what I mean? I see this a lot today. Everybody wants to do a box logo because Supreme does box logos, so people say, oh fuck, let me do a red box logo, put my name brand in there. People are buying Supreme for the name Supreme. They're not buying just box logos because it's cool to have box logos on shirts. I see a ton of brands doing it. If you're doing it, I'm not taking a shot at you, but I'm just letting you know I could see where the influence is coming from. A lot of us could see it. There's a ton of people that see it and they're like, oh, this guy did a box logo. It's not necessarily Supreme. It says like, you know, whatever their brand name is, like Hustle Hard or whatever it is, and it's just a box logo on a t-shirt. So I see the influence I see a lot of people falling victim of pretty much comparing themselves to other brands. They see Supreme and they want to be like Supreme, so the influence is in their clothing. You know what I mean? Very, very easy to fall into this. It's very, very hard to get out of it once you've already started. My past experience when I was trying to be like Iceberg, all I did was take a step back, say, nobody's buying this shit. I wasted all this money on these t-shirts, wasted all this time. Maybe I should just do my own thing. So once I started doing that, that's when real money started coming in, was me going back to what my brand is really about. Not me trying to copy another brand, not me trying to be somebody else, but actually me just doing me. When you do that, when you actually go back to your roots on what the brand is about, what you set out to do, it's so much easier to do things that just happen naturally. Now everything is just organic. The shit that you're creating is because you're creating it because you like it, because you want to wear the shit, not because you're trying to be like another brand or you're trying to compare yourself to another brand. I blocked all that shit out. Like I said, from like 99 to early 2000s, I redid everything, mindset, everything. So now, even till this day, I don't follow brands like Supreme. I mean, I'm into the shit. You know, I own a lot of Supreme pieces, but I don't follow them on social media. I don't follow any other brand on social media to see what they're doing because it just influences me on what I'm trying to do. You can hear it in music also. It's the same thing. If somebody's creating an album, say they're a rapper, and they're listening to maybe their favorite rapper's album, the influence is there because now they're trying to recreate what this rapper's doing because they're listening to it and it's influencing them. From what they say to what it sounds like, all of that shit could be heard through the music. It's the same thing. If you're creating a brand and you're designing something, and if you're looking at other brands, you're gonna start pulling influence from those other brands, and then it just feels like a copycat. But there's nothing wrong with influence. So say if you were creating your brand and you're looking at shit from the 80s, not what's popular now, but shit from the 80s or 70s, and maybe materials, maybe prints are influencing you, and you incorporate that into what you're doing, by all means, that's cool, because you're not necessarily copying a brand. Say if you're following Undefeated and you see Undefeated launch all this shit, you start getting influenced by that, and then now you're trying to launch the same thing that Undefeated just did. It's a bad recipe for business, you know what I mean? So hopefully this helps you guys out. If you're in this same situation right now, hopefully there's a way to reverse it and you just take a step back. Remember what you started this brand for. Remember your mission statement. Remember what you set out to do. So if it was just to make t-shirts that have funny sayings and shit like that, stick with that shit. Don't be influenced on what everybody else is doing, what this brand's doing, what that brand's doing. They're selling tens of thousands of units. Don't worry about that. Just keep at your own pace. Keep creating what you set out to create. Hopefully this helps you guys out. I figured it out early on, a little later, but I figured it out that I'm not Iceberg. I could never be Iceberg, and people aren't going to spend hundreds of dollars on my t-shirts that was a carbon copy of Iceberg. Once I figured that shit out, boom, light bulb went off in the head and I just started rolling. All right, catch you guys on the next one. Yeah.